Although there are more than 130 museums in Paris, most tourists only visit 3 of them. And did you know that it would take more than 400 hours to traverse every street in Paris? Or around 17 days of uninterrupted walking? I had only 14. Not enough, but that will have to do. I spent 2 whole weeks seeing it for myself. I've traveled alone through dozens of cities, from Tokyo's immaculate streets to Rome's narrow alleyways, but Paris promised something different, a relaxed pace that invites you to stroll, observe, and wonder. Enjoy the peaceful delight of discovering alone in this romantic city. It was a chilly Sunday morning when I arrived in Paris. The kind where the air has a subtle bread scent and the sky appears to be brushed silver. I got a taxi into the city after my plane touched down at Charles de Gaulle, and it took me around 45 minutes and €55 to get to my tiny accommodation close to the Latin Quarter. I spoke a little French, and the driver spoke a little English. It was successful. We discussed sports and the weather, and I experienced that old rush as I saw the Eiffel Tower in the distance. I had seen it countless times in photos, but never quite like this. A walker's delight is the Latin Quarter, with tiny cafes, jazz bars, narrow lanes, and historic bookshops that all look like they belong in a movie. I strolled along the Seine on my first full day. No rush, no plans. That is rewarded in Paris. I spent an hour sipping coffee by the window at Shakespeare & Company, the well-known English-language bookstore. It was similar to a place I liked in Edinburgh, although it was warmer. I had a baguette sandwich for lunch from a corner cafe. It was well worth the €6. I watched students heading toward Notre Dame across the bridge. Even with renovations, the cathedral is stunning. Above the river, the towers rise like stone sails. I went on a walking food tour in the Marais area in the evening. It lasted roughly 3 hours, and featured wine, pastry, and cheese tastings. At first, all 7 of us were strangers, but by the end, we felt like old friends. That's what makes food and travel so unforgettable. Paris has more museums than I could ever see in 2 weeks, but I started with the Louvre. I booked a skip-the-line guided tour for €70, worth it. My guide, Camille, told stories behind each artwork, making even the smallest painting come alive. The Mona Lisa was smaller than I expected, but seeing it in person still gave me chills. From there, I walked to the Musée d'Orsay, just 20 minutes across the river. Its grand clock windows overlook the Seine, and the Impressionist art, Monet, Van Gogh, Degas, felt light and full of air. I was sitting on the Pont Neuf that night, watching boats go past. Paris shines in lovely blue and gold after dusk. I recognized that both cities float, although in different ways, as I thought about Venice, where I had been 2 years ago. Paris floats on time, whereas Venice floats on water. My legs cried for peace by the weekend, so I changed things up. To get to the Palace of Versailles, which is 20 kilometers from Paris, I took a quick cab ride that cost about €20. I preferred a slower morning, but the rail, RRC line, would have been less expensive at about €8. A self-guided ticket for the palace tour cost €30. I rented an audio guide and explored rooms decorated with gold. Despite the overcast skies, the Hall of Mirrors looked brilliant. The grounds outside seemed to go on forever. I rented a little bike and rode it past statues and fountains. I could have been there all day. I made a stop at Montparnasse Tower on the way back to see the Eiffel Tower at dusk. Paris looked peaceful from above, as if it were breathing quietly below me. I focused on neighborhoods halfway through the trip. I spent a morning in the crowded art galleries and shops of Le Marais. The legendary LA's du Falafel served falafel for lunch and was deliciously crunchy. I spent the afternoon wandering the old artist quarter of Montmartre. I climbed Sacré-Cœur Basilica's long stairs. The entire city appears to be at your feet, and the view from the top is free. Later, I spent roughly €25 on a 2-hour street art tour in the 13th arrondissement. It revealed a completely unique, daring, modern, and raw aspect of Paris. It was refined and less radical than the street murals in Berlin. I took a cab ride to the Eiffel Tower that evening so I could see the light show at 9 o'clock. It cost €30 to enter the top floor. When the tower started to shine, I realized that none of the cities I had previously been to, including Sydney, New York, and Prague, could match this. Paris sparkles in a unique way. I was curious about what was just outside the city. For €90, transport included, I purchased a half-day tour to Giverny, Monet's garden. Paris is around 75 kilometers away, and the bus ride takes about 1.5 hours each way. Water lilies, green bridges, and peaceful walks that resembled brushstrokes were all features of the garden that you would expect. I took a champagne area tour to Épernay the following day, which cost roughly €130, including transportation and tastings. Each way, the drive takes 2 hours. During the ride, I met a Canadian couple and we talked about our experiences traveling alone. You learn in Paris that being by yourself does not equate to loneliness. I spent the last 2 days soaking it all in. I read on a bench under chestnut trees in the Luxembourg Gardens one afternoon. Another morning, I strolled across Ile St. Louis and got tiny presents like scarves, postcards, and soaps. I went on a Seine River tour on my last night. Someone was playing the accordion on deck as the boat went beneath blazing bridges. Are you a tourist? Perhaps. However, there are instances when clichés are appropriate for a purpose. I had a peaceful evening at a little restaurant close to Saint Michel to cap off my trip. Red wine, crème brûlée, and roast chicken. I took the long route back to where I was staying, taking one final walk through those streets lit by lamps. I came to the conclusion that Paris is not a destination you cross off a list. It's a spot you keep going back to, each time uncovering something new. Paris seems to follow you back to your house. The city lingers in your shoes, your camera roll, and even your pocket change even after you pack your luggage. Few places I've visited feel as vibrant as this one. It wasn't lonely to walk here by myself. It was like being a part of a silent, never-ending tale. Give it time if you ever go. It took me just 14 days to realize how much I still hadn't seen. I want to see you on a bridge in Paris someday. Until then, keep exploring and looking up. The serene pleasure of wandering by yourself in the most romantic city in the world.